They told me the shift paid $50 an hour. They didn't tell me I'd have to pay in blood. If you're seeing this, you found the restricted protocols for the 12:01 a.m. shift at the Infinite gas station. Most people don't make it to the sunrise because they break the third rule. I'm going to tell you exactly what happens when the desert starts to breathe. But before we begin the final hour of the shift, like this video to lock your own safety protocol, subscribe so you never miss a survival guide, and share this with someone who wouldn't survive a single night in the dark. Now, let's talk about the teeth. My name is Elias and I needed the money. In 2026, when the rest of the world is moving toward high-speed glass towers and digital ghosts, there's still a place for the forgotten. I found an ad on a literal piece of plywood nailed to a telephone pole. Night shift. $50 an hour. Must be comfortable with silence. Do not bring a watch. The gas station was called the Oasis, but it sat in the middle of a desert that didn't exist on any GPS. To get there, you had to drive down Highway 9 until the radio started playing nothing but static, then turn left at the tree that looked like a hanging man. The station was a neon-soaked island in a sea of pitch-black sand. The fluorescent lights hummed with a frequency that made my teeth vibrate. The man who hired me was named Silas. He was wearing a uniform from the 1970s, and his skin looked like it was made of old, cracked leather. He didn't ask for my ID. He didn't ask for my resume. He just handed me a laminated sheet of paper and a heavy, iron key. The shift starts at 12:01 a.m., he whispered. It ends when the sun comes up. If the sun doesn't come up, stay inside the glass. The glass is reinforced with salt. They can't get through the salt. I looked at the sheet. Rule 1, the customer in the suit. At 12:15 a.m., a black sedan will pull up to pump 4. A man in a gray suit will walk to the window. He has no face, only a mouth. He will ask for a pack of red shadows. We do not sell red shadows. Tell him we are out of stock, then offer him a piece of sugarless gum. If he takes the gum, he will leave. If he asks again for the cigarettes, duck behind the counter and do not breathe until you hear the car engine start. I thought Silas was insane until 12:15 a.m. hit. I didn't have a watch, but I felt the shift in the air. The temperature dropped 40 degrees. A black sedan, silent as a grave, rolled onto the lot. The headlights didn't cast light, they cast shadows. The man stepped out. He moved with a jerky, stop-motion gait. When he reached the bulletproof glass, I saw it. Smooth skin from his forehead to his chin. No eyes. No nose. Just a jagged, horizontal slit where a mouth should be. Red shadows, he rasped. It sounded like two stones grinding together. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the gum. We're out of stock, sir, I managed to say. My voice sounded small in the vast silence of the desert. Would you like a piece of peppermint gum instead? The slit in his face widened. I could see rows of needle-thin teeth, vibrating in anticipation. He reached out a hand with 6 fingers and took the gum. He didn't unwrap it. He just shoved it into that horrific mouth and chewed. The sound was like wet wood snapping. He turned and walked back to his car. I watched the taillights vanish into the blackness, but they didn't drive away. They just faded out as if the car had been erased from reality. Rule 2, the radio. At 1 a.m., the radio behind the counter will turn on by itself. It will play a recording of your own voice from exactly 24 hours ago. If the recording starts talking about things you haven't done yet, turn the volume to maximum and scream over it. You must not hear the future. If you hear the date of your own death, the shift ends early. You will not like how it ends. I sat on the high stool, staring at the old plastic radio. It looked like a relic from the 80s. Exactly when the air grew heavy again, the dial spun. Static hissed, then a voice came through. It was me. I was talking to my landlord about the rent. I felt a wave of relief. It was just a recording. But then my voice on the radio changed. It became frantic. No, please. Not the pumps. Anything but the pumps. I froze. I hadn't said that. I wasn't going to say that. My hand flew to the volume knob. I cranked it until the speakers crackled. I began to scream. I recited the alphabet. I sang every song I knew at the top of my lungs. I screamed until my throat felt like it was bleeding. Through the wall of noise, I could still hear the radio me screaming in agony. I didn't stop until the radio went dead. Rule 3, the tapping. Between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., you will hear a polite tapping on the roof. Do not look up. The ceiling is made of acoustic tiles. If you look up, the things on the roof will see your eyes and they will know you are aware of them. If you stay focused on the floor, they will think you are just a mannequin. The tapping started at 2:10 a.m. Tap, 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 tap. It sounded like fingernails. Long, hard fingernails. Then it changed to the sound of something heavy being dragged. Thump. Thump. I kept my eyes glued to the dirty linoleum floor. I studied every scuff mark, every stain. I counted the tiles. 144. Then a tile directly above my head creaked. A drop of something thick and cold fell onto my shoulder. It smelled like old pennies and stagnant water. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I stayed still. I focused on a dead fly near the base of the counter. I watched it for 40 minutes. Above me, the dragging sound became faster. It sounded like dozens of creatures were now racing across the roof, their claws clicking against the metal. One of them leaned over the edge of the roof. I could see its shadow on the pavement outside the window. It was long with too many joints in its arms. It hung upside down, its head passing the top of the glass. I didn't look up. I watched the shadow. The shadow had a long, prehensile tongue that licked the glass, leaving a trail of glowing slime. Elias, the shadow whispered, "Look at us. We have gifts. We have the red shadows you were looking for." I bit my lip until I tasted blood. I didn't look up. I didn't answer. I just waited. Finally, the sun, or whatever passes for light in this place, began to bleed over the horizon of the black desert. The tapping stopped. The shadows retreated. I survived the first 3 hours. But the list had 4 more rules and the night was far from over. The clock didn't exist here, but the air told me it was 3 a.m. The silence of the desert was replaced by a low, mechanical thrumming that made the shelves of motor oil rattle. I looked out the window at the fuel islands. The neon lights flickered from a sickly yellow to a deep, bruised purple. Rule 4, the empty tank. Between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., a rusted white pickup truck will pull up to pump 1. It won't have a driver. The passenger door will hang open, swinging in a wind that isn't there. You must walk out to the pump. You must take the nozzle and insert it into the tank. Do not look inside the truck. If you hear a child crying from the truck bed, sing a lullaby. If you hear growling, keep your eyes on the pavement and count backward from 100. The pump will stop at exactly $6.66. Do not hang up the nozzle until the total changes to $0 on its own. I felt the iron key in my pocket grow cold, colder than the air in the freezer. I didn't want to step outside the salt-reinforced glass. The darkness beyond the neon felt like a physical weight, waiting to crush me. But the white truck was already there. It was a 1980s Chevy, covered in rust that looked like dried blood. The passenger door creaked, "Eark," as it swung back and forth. I stepped out. The desert air smelled like ozone and old meat. Every step I took toward pump 1 felt like walking through waist-deep water. I reached the truck. I kept my chin tucked to my chest, staring at my scuffed boots. I grabbed the nozzle. It felt slimy, like it was coated in a thin layer of organic film. I shoved it into the tank. Then the sound started. It wasn't a child. It was a growl, a deep, chest-vibrating rumble that came from the shadows of the truck's cabin. It sounded like a mountain of wet leather being torn apart. Rule 4, count backward. 100, 99, 98. I whispered. My breath hitched in my throat. I could feel something watching me from the open door. I could hear the sound of long, heavy breathing, slow and rhythmic. Something shifted in the truck bed behind me. The metal groaned under the weight of something massive. 97, 96. The pump clicked. I glanced at the screen. $6.66. My heart stopped. I wanted to pull the nozzle out and run, but the rule was clear. If I hung it up now, I wouldn't make it to the door. I waited. The growling moved closer. I could feel a hot, wet heat radiating from the open passenger door. It smelled like a slaughterhouse in July. 95, 94. Suddenly, the digits on the pump began to spin wildly. The numbers blurred into symbols I didn't recognize, jagged lines and ancient runes. Then with a loud clack it reset. $0. I ripped the nozzle out, didn't even wait to put the cap back on, and sprinted for the glass door. As I slammed it shut and locked the iron bolt, I heard the white truck roar to life. But it didn't drive away. It just vanished into a cloud of black smoke that smelled like burning hair. Rule 5, the blue light. At 4:15 a.m., the lights in the snack aisle will turn blue. This is the feeding window. The things that live in the coolers are allowed to come out. You must stand behind the counter and look only at the security monitor. Do not look at the aisle with your own eyes. If you see something on the monitor that looks like a person you know, call out their name once. If they turn around, they are safe. If they keep walking toward the counter, turn off the monitor and hide in the bathroom for 10 minutes. The hum of the neon changed. The bright store lights dimmed, replaced by a haunting, underwater blue. I turned my chair to face the small, grainy CRT monitor. The snack aisle was empty. Then a figure appeared from behind the soda coolers. It was a girl. She was wearing a yellow raincoat just like my sister used to wear when we were kids. She was walking slowly, her head down. My chest tightened. "Sarah?" I whispered. The figure stopped. She didn't turn around. She began to walk toward the counter. Her movements were jerky, as if her limbs were being pulled by invisible wires. She reached the end of the aisle. In the grainy black and white footage, I saw her hands. They weren't hands. They were long, pale stalks of flesh that ended in twitching eyes. I didn't wait. I reached under the counter and slapped the power switch on the monitor. The screen died with a static pop. I scrambled into the tiny, cramped bathroom and locked the door. I sat on the floor, my back against the cold tile, and stared at the gap under the door. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Then I saw the blue light under the door flicker. Thump, thump, thump. Something was hitting the door. Not with a fist, but with something soft and heavy, like a bag of wet sand. "Elias," a voice said. It was Sarah's voice, but it was layered with 1,000 other voices. The man in the suit, Silas, the radio me. "Open up. It's cold out here. The blue light is so cold." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stayed there until the blue light faded and the normal, sickly yellow hum of the store returned. When I walked back out, the snack aisle was a mess. Every bag of chips had been shredded, but nothing was eaten. It looked like something had been looking for a place to hide inside the packaging. Rule 6, the phone. At 5 a.m., the payphone outside will ring. It hasn't been connected to a line in 30 years. You must answer it on the third ring. A voice will give you a list of items. Write them down. If you miss even one item, you will have to provide it yourself from your own body. I stood by the window watching the rusted black payphone. 5 a.m. arrived with a bone-chilling silence. Ring. The sound was deafening in the empty desert. Ring. I stepped out of the glass. The air felt thin, as if the oxygen was being sucked out of the world. I reached the phone. Ring. I picked up the receiver. There was no dial tone. Only the sound of a vast, howling wind. 3 gallons of red, a voice whispered. 2 sets of teeth. 1 gallon of tears. And a heart that still beats for the sun. I scribbled the words onto the back of my hand with a Sharpie. My heart was racing. I knew what the red was. I knew what the teeth were. The shift was almost over, but the most expensive part was just beginning. The voice on the payphone didn't hang up. It stayed on the line, a low, buzzing hum that sounded like a million flies trapped in a jar. I stared at the back of my hand, at the ink that seemed to be sinking into my skin. 3 gallons of red. 2 sets of teeth. 1 gallon of tears. Rule 7, the payment. At 5:30 a.m. the manager will arrive. He does not come in a car. He comes from the shadows behind the dumpster. You must have the items from the phone call ready on the counter. If you do not have them, he will take them from you. If the sun touches the horizon before he is satisfied, the shift never ends. You will stay in the 12:01 a.m. loop forever. I panicked. I looked around the bright, sterile interior of the shop. Where was I supposed to get 3 gallons of blood? I looked at the soda fountain. The cherry blast lever was leaking a thick, dark crimson syrup. I pulled the handle. It wasn't syrup. It was warm. It smelled of iron and salt. I filled 3 massive plastic jugs until my hands were stained a permanent rust brown. Then the teeth. I searched the lost and found box behind the counter. My fingers brushed against something cold and hard. It was a jar. Inside were dozens of human teeth, still rooted in bits of jawbone. Some were gold-capped, others were decayed. I dumped 2 handfuls onto the counter next to the blood syrup. The tears were harder. I wasn't crying yet, I was too terrified to cry. Fear is a dry emotion. I looked at the security monitor. The girl in the yellow raincoat was back. She was standing just outside the glass door, her pale, eyeless face pressed against the pane. She was weeping. Thick, black liquid was pouring from her empty sockets, pooling on the concrete. I grabbed a floor bucket and cracked the door just enough to scoop up the liquid. The smell was like ancient, stagnant swamp water. I set the bucket on the counter next to the jars and the teeth. 5:45 a.m. The sky was still black. The stars were gone. It felt like the universe had ended and only this gas station remained. Then the back door, the one marked "Authorized Personnel Only," creaked open. The manager didn't walk, he unfolded. He was a mass of dark, tailored fabric and white bone. He was 7 feet tall, but he had to hunch over to fit under the fluorescent lights. He had no head, just a large antique cash register where a neck should be. The keys on the register were made of human finger bones. He reached the counter. The drawer on his chest popped open with a sharp ding. "Payment," he hissed. The sound didn't come from him. It came from the speakers in the ceiling. I pushed the 3 jugs of red forward. He tipped them back, the liquid disappearing into a vent in his collar. Ding. A numeral flipped on the register. 1. I pushed the pile of teeth forward. He swept them into the drawer with a clawed hand. Ding. The numeral flipped to 2. I lifted the bucket of black tears. My arms were shaking. I could feel the heat radiating from him, a dry desert heat that made my skin peel. I poured the liquid into the drawer. Silence. The register didn't ding. The numeral stayed at 2. "It is not enough," the ceiling speakers roared. "The weight is light. A heart that still beats for the sun. Give it to us, Elias." He reached across the counter. His fingers were like cold needles. He pressed them against my chest, right over my heart. I could feel the skin beginning to tear. I looked at the window. The horizon was still black. The sun was refusing to rise. The loop was closing. "Wait!" I screamed. I grabbed a photo from the Employee of the Month frame on the wall. It was a picture of Silas, the man who hired me, smiling in the sunlight of 1974. I shoved the photo into the manager's drawer. His heart. He loved this place. Take his memory. The manager froze. The fingerbone keys on his chest began to clack wildly, a frantic rhythmic typing. The cash register had spun around. Ding. The numeral flipped to 3. The manager collapsed inward, shrinking until he was nothing more than a pile of old dusty rags on the linoleum floor. At that exact moment, a sliver of gold light cut across the black sand of the desert. The neon signs flickered and died. The hum of the store stopped. I didn't wait to see if Silas was okay. I didn't wait for my pay. I ran to my car. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The gas station wasn't there anymore. There was only an empty, weed-choked lot with a rusted sign that read, "Closed since 1979. I looked at the back of my hand. The ink was gone. But when I smiled in the mirror, I realized my teeth were different. They were gold-capped. And in the passenger seat, sitting perfectly still, was a pack of Red Shadow cigarettes. I never went back. But sometimes when I'm driving at night and the radio turns to static, I hear a polite tapping on the roof of my car. And I know, the shift isn't over yet.